Then, since we have quorum, I will call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Human Services Technical Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube as a way for members of the public to participate. So I will please ask you to keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. And for the purpose of the meeting minutes, I ask that you state your name before any comments. All right. And as we get into action items, we will be taking a roll call vote. I will ask staff to call out the committee member names and then ask how you vote. We will begin the meeting with a roll call of attendance. Dee Dee, will you please take roll call?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will begin. We do have our first committee member, our chair, Edwards. Renee, and I would like to apologize for the pronunciation of last names. Renee Arias Benavides, City of Peoria. Present. Melanie Dijkstra, Town of Gilbert.
This is Jennifer Loria attending for Melanie.
Thank you. Naomi Farrell from the City of Tempe. Naomi. Okay. Autumn Grooms from the City of El Mirage. Jerry Gerardo from the City of Avondale.
Present.
Thank you. Elena Gudino from the Valley of the Sun United Way.
Present.
Thank you. Susan Hallett from the City of Phoenix. Marilyn Pasenik from the Area Agency on Aging.
Here.
Thank you. Christina Hannah Chesfeld, City of Goodyear.
Present.
Karen Bishop for the City of Chandler.
This is Karen.
Thank you. Rachel Sanders from the City of Buckeye. Chair Edwards, we do have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee Dee. All right, we'll go on to number 2 on our agenda today. And so that is a call to the audience. Please note that members of the public were given an opportunity to submit written comments relating to this meeting to azmag.gov/comment within 1 hour of the posted start time for the meeting. Dee Dee, have we received any comments from the public today?
We have that.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 3, and that is the approval of the April 14th, 2022 minutes. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
This is Renee with Peoria. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Renee, for the motion. Is there a second?
This is Christina from Goodyear. I can second the motion. I wasn't there for the meeting though.
Okay, thank you, Christina, for the second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Okay. Dee Dee, would you please conduct a roll call vote, and everyone please indicate your vote with yay, nay, or abstention.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Edwards.
Yay.
Melanie from the Town of Gilbert.
Yay.
Renee from the City of Peoria to do the motion. Naomi Farrell, City of Tempe. Autumn Grooms from the City of El Mirage. Jerry from the City of Avondale.
Yay.
Elena from the Valley of the Sun United Way.
Yay.
Susan Hallett, City of Phoenix. Marilyn Pasenik from the Area Agency on Aging.
Yay.
Christina, second the motion. Karen Bishop from City of Chandler,
Yay.
Rachel Sanders, City of Buckeye. Thank you, Chair. It is unanimous.
All right, great. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to item number 4. So this is concerning the 2022 point in time count report. And I would like to introduce Katie Gentry with MAG to present an overview of the report. Katie, thanks so much for joining us today, being able to provide this information to us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to give a quick overview of the point in time count. The point in time count happened in January of this year, and we finally got results in mid-May. So presenting them here to you, happy to answer any questions throughout or at the end, stop me at any time. So quick overview of the purpose of the count. It is a requirement by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, better known as HUD. And really, we have all of the different communities within Maricopa County come together to individually count their area. And it really gives us a thorough idea of general homeless populations and then subpopulations. So those include veterans, families, chronically homeless individuals, and youth. And I will go through each of those subpopulations as I go through this presentation. First here, you'll see our total point in time counts. You'll notice a missing block in 2021. We did not conduct the point in time count due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But as you see, this is pretty concerning. We continue to see a rise in homelessness, specifically that unsheltered homelessness, which is that orange block, since 2016. Breaking that down a little bit further, we see some growth rates just from 2020 to 2022. Overall, we saw a 22% total increase with 34% increase on our unsheltered and a 9% sheltered count. So our unsheltered definitely increased at a higher rate than our overall point in time count. This is on par with what we've been seeing over the last 5 years of a steady increase of about 11% each year, noticing that we skipped a year of 2021. So I want to break down specifically different subpopulations. You'll see the solid line is our total number of households that were found throughout the point in time count. We had 550 total households counted within families, and the majority of those were sheltered, shown by the blue dotted line, with fewer of those being unsheltered, shown by the orange dotted line. On the chronically homeless side, we counted 1,287 individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. There was about a 50-50 split between that chronic and that sheltered and unsheltered, with a slightly higher count in our unsheltered individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. This is higher than we've ever seen before, so that was also a concern to us, is that we're continuing to see people who are experiencing longer lengths of homelessness than ever before. Next, we'll move on to veterans. So we had 420 veterans experiencing homelessness, the majority of those being sheltered, with about a third unsheltered. We've continued to see this count stay pretty consistent over the last 6 years. And finally, unaccompanied youth. This is the age group that falls into that 18 to 24 range, so different than youth defined in other categories. The majority of these were unsheltered, which was a huge concern for us. We do not have enough youth beds in our community, and are continuing to work on that consistently, but did find more than ever before, specifically in this demographic. There, I wanted to go into a brief overview of age groups and gender. So we do see the majority of our folks are adults. So that 25 plus category, we see a majority being male, with less being female, and then a small percentage, less than 1%, that identify as transgender, questioning their gender nonconforming. Want to break that down just a little bit further, because this was asked of us, is seeing those breaking down seniors and older adults. We do ask specifically on the unsheltered side how many people are older adults. So we had 878 of that 3,000, or of that over 4,000 4,000 adults that were 25 plus. 649 fell into the category of 55 to 61, and then another 229 fell into the 62 plus category. We are seeing older adults experiencing homelessness more than ever before, so this is a category that we've been keeping an eye on. Further demographics, wanted to share with you some race and ethnicity data. So 63% are white, 26% are Black or African American, and you'll see kind of the 6% are American Indian or Alaskan Native, and 5% are multiple race, 76% are non-Hispanic, non-Latino, and 24% are Hispanic Latino. We do see that Black or African American and American Indian or Alaskan Native are more populated in our homeless response system than in our general census data, and we see slightly less Hispanic or Latino experiencing homelessness than we see across our 2019 census data. Oh, I jumped the gun. Here's the direct comparison here. So you'll see that sheltered and unsheltered, we also see quite a big difference. In here, you'll see that on gender specifically, we see way more males who are unsheltered than females comparatively. So orange, the bars of orange are unsheltered and the bars of blue are sheltered. Our white race, we specifically see more on the unsheltered side. And then kind of across the spectrum all the way over to age, you'll see way more adults experiencing unsheltered homelessness than we do see in shelter. Lastly, I wanted to highlight our additional populations. So these are folks who, when asked, are they experiencing other challenges, either mental illness, substance use, HIV and AIDS, or they're fleeing domestic violence. We are continuing to ask this question year over year. Most are staying pretty consistent, although we do see a slight uptick in our individuals who self-diagnose as having a mental illness. The last thing, we add a couple questions that are local to Maricopa County. This year, we added 2 additional questions. We asked, was your homelessness caused by the COVID-19 pandemic? And did you have any pets? And if so, how many? We did find that 302 said yes to having their homelessness caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which was less than 10%. And we had found about 352 pets of actual pets, so those that belong to just over 200 owners. So how do we use this data? It is really to galvanize local and regional responses. We have been working on a region-wide plan called Pathways Home, and the point in time count data is just one piece of that overall plan. It does support planning and performance management and connecting people experiencing homelessness to services. There are some benefits and limitations to the point in time count. It is a requirement by HUD and does bring HUD dollars into our community. Last year, we received about $35.7 million coming in locally. It does provide useful data and year-over-year comparisons because we've been doing this count back to sometime in the mid-1990s. So we do have comparison year over year, and it shows trends in homelessness. I do want to point out some limitations, though. It is very difficult to measure family and youth homelessness specifically. Those are often running a little bit different type of homelessness, either doubled up or couch surfing that isn't a traditional HUD definition and very difficult to find on the day of the count. All data is self-reported, so we are asking people what they are going through, and it is mostly volunteer run. And so folks may not be as willing to open up and tell us their complete story on the morning of the count. And finally, because of all of those things, it doesn't give us a total picture of homelessness. So before I end, I just want to say thank you to all of our pick count volunteers and coordinators. We could not do the point in time count without all of the folks that come out on the morning of. We have put about over 1,000 volunteers across Maricopa County for one morning for about 5 hours, and that they are a huge part of making this a success. All right, I know I just threw a ton of information at you, but here's my contact information too, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, co-chair or chair.
Thank you so much, Katie. Really appreciate it. Are there questions from members of the committee? Yes, Mary Lynn.
Can you send out the PowerPoint?
Yes, the PowerPoint is on our website. And Dylan, could you send that out to folks?
Thank you. Christina.
Thanks. Thank you. My question had to do with the youth. I noticed that number went up. Do we know what may have caused that disproportionate increase?
We haven't seen like a huge disproportionate increase necessarily. We've actually just seen slowly over the last 3 years, we've lost. So it follows the same trend line as our total household increase. However, we see a greater number of youth experiencing unsheltered homelessness than sheltered. We did lose quite a few youth specific beds between 2019 and now. And so we're starting to see that increase. There has been a response from both ADOH and DES specifically to start addressing youth homelessness for a drop-in center and outreach services specifically focused on youth. So we hope to get those folks better connected to some of the services that we have.
Thanks, Christina, for your question, and Katie for the response. Anything else for Katie? All right. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing that information. And of course, your ongoing work on all of this, much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, on to agenda item number 5. My Dog is My Home presentation. So with that agenda item, I'm pleased to introduce everyone to Sarah Hernandez from My Dog is My Home and Danielle Emery with the Urban Resource Institute. Thank you, both of you, for joining us today. And I want to pass the baton over to you, and the floor is yours. Excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to start and then I will later pass the baton over to Danielle. So my name is Sarah Hernandez. I am the Communications Fellow with My Dog is My Home, and I'm honored to be here with you guys today. We are a national nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving the human-animal bond in circumstances of homelessness, as my dog is right by my side wanting scratchies right now. Our mission is to increase access to shelter and housing for people experiencing homelessness with companion animals. We are a primarily volunteer-run organization, and we are capacity builders. We assist homeless services providers, also domestic violence service providers, with transitioning to pet-friendly models. So we are not direct service. We don't have our own shelter, but we work on the policy and the program level to make more macro level changes and work with existing shelters to help them understand that animals are part of the family unit, that accepting animals and people together is part of trauma-informed care, person-centered care, and low barrier care. So we have 4 major programs, and our first is our Co-Sheltering Collaborative, which is a peer-to-peer learning network of homeless services providers, animal welfare organizations, government agencies, and academics, for example. And these can be people who are actively implementing co-sheltering or actively learning about co-sheltering. And the collaborative has 4 calls a year, also on Thursdays, which are an opportunity to hear presentations and conduct dialogue. We have an online platform for our members to talk and share resources, and we have virtual working groups such as our racial justice group. And our next virtual quarterly meeting is on August 25th. So if you want more information about the collaborative or that meeting, I'll provide our email address in the chat later on, which is collaborative@mydogismyhome.org, and you can ask me questions afterward as well. I'm very, very proud to say that just last week, we had our very first collaborative open house. It was in person at Grace Marketplace in Florida. And Grace is a shelter for people experiencing homelessness that has a very successful co-sheltering and animal welfare program. And the people who attended had the chance to tour the facility. They spoke with Grace representatives, and they had the chance to listen to shelter residents. So our overall goal with these open houses is to showcase a functioning model of co-sheltering that responds to a region's needs and that utilizes local resources, but also to build a regional network of providers that can support each other through the different phases of co-sheltering. Our second program is our co-sheltering conference, which is an extension of the collaborative. That is a 30-day virtual event, and we are actively planning next year's conference, which will be in early 2023. And the theme for this year's was Stronger Together, Building Allyship Between Movements. And we do have some of our 2021 conference videos on our website, so I will put the link to that in the chat. Our third program is our storytelling program, and that is rooted in the belief that qualitative data is as important to our mission as quantitative. So far, we've created several short films and content for our conference and also a blog, and the short films will also be on that video library link. And the objective of this program is to empower people with lived experience of homelessness who have companion animals to tell their own stories and be their own advocates and advocates for their communities, because we understand that they are the true experts regarding the complexity of homelessness, and we recognize that they can be a vital voice for animals as well. We also welcome the stories of family, friends, and allies, and we believe that stories are transformative for both the storytellers and those who listen to them, and that stories can help underscore the importance of what I talked about earlier: low barrier care, trauma-informed, and individualized care. And this includes the necessity of allowing people and animals to shelter together. I recently had the privilege and the pleasure of listening to the story of Scott. I mix up the two S's, Scott and his dog Scout. And I will share that story with you. I'll put the link in the chat. And our fourth and final program is we offer technical assistance. We provide trainings and resource coordinations for shelters that request support with the transition to co-sheltering. And this includes partnering with other organizations that have successful co-sheltering programs, such as our friends at Urban Resource Institute. And Danielle is with us here today. So I will work on putting contact info and links in the chat, and I will pass the baton to Danielle, and then we're both here for questions afterward.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Emery. I'm the director of the People and Animals Living Safely program at Urban Resource Institute. We are in New York City, so across the country. We have been in operation since 2013. So we have been working with My Dog Is My Home and members of the Co-Sheltering Collaborative for almost 5 years at this point, participating in the conference, the calls. It's an amazing organization, incredibly helpful to organizations that are looking to learn about co-sheltering or potentially take on co-sheltering within their communities. A little bit more about Urban Resource Institute. We are actually the largest provider of domestic violence shelter and shelter for homeless families in New York City. So we have been in operation for over 40 years and have not always had a pet program. We actually launched because our CEO learned about the issue. So any way that someone learns about the issue, starts thinking about it, talking about it, came back and said, why is no one in New York City doing this? Specifically for survivors of domestic violence, we knew there was a barrier to seeking safety, to entering shelter if people could not remain with their pets and bring their pets with them to also access safety. In New York City, as in many places, I'm seeing the intersection between homelessness and domestic violence. So New York City, we have a very large homeless family population. Our unsheltered population, while difficult to track, I think because of the doubling up or the couch surfing and all of that, but we have many very large homeless families population, and more than 40% of people who are in our homeless family shelters are also report the reason they are there is because of domestic violence originally. So we have a large number of people who flee domestic violence are able to temporarily enter DV shelter that is time limited. They're not able to secure permanent housing. So we are often working with our Department of Homeless Services, in addition to our DV services, to advocate for folks to be able to remain with their pets, and for supportive services for both survivors of domestic violence and homeless families and homeless individuals with pets. So I am here today just as a representative of an organization that has successful co-sheltering. Every as Sarah mentioned, and the reason that organization like My Dog is My Home is so powerful is that every social services, every shelter, every community looks very different. Their response and approach to homelessness is very different based on the needs of the community. And so it's an amazing collaborative to have all these different types of programs to learn about different models and different approaches. And so I can speak to our model, which is what we call co-living. Because we have such a large organization and population in New York City, our homeless shelters that we operate in are mostly large apartment buildings where families are predominantly able to be in their own unit. That's a unique aspect of our program. But I can also speak to community partnerships, getting buy-in, developing programs, all of those types of questions. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you so much, Sarah, and for both of your work. Danielle, for fighting the good fight across the country. It doesn't matter where someone's live. Homelessness is an issue nationwide. So thank you for your commitment to it. And Sarah, thank you for your incredible work on helping people and agencies and whatnot really understand that sometimes what may prevent someone from being housed is because they don't have an opportunity to be housed with their loved one, which may just be a pet, and there's nothing there's nothing that we really should always consider that a key point. That shouldn't be the thing preventing someone from being housed. So are there questions for Sarah or Danielle?
I was just gonna say, I think that the chat is disabled. So if you need my contact information, it's Sarah with 2 H's, SARAHH at mydogismyhome.org, or the collaborative at mydogismyhome.org. You can reach out at any time with questions or any links that you would like, and happy to share those with you.
So much. And Dee Dee, would you make note to make sure that we are able to send out the contact information of Sarah to the members of the committee?
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Dylan did confirm with me that he will be forwarding after this meeting contact information and information on the presentation to the community members.
Wonderful, thank you. And I will say heat relief, day and night heat relief shelter that the county and the city of Phoenix partnered on beginning just a couple of months ago. We did actually ensure that folks could bring their pets into the shelter. So it was I think this is something that's really become more known and understood in our community over the last couple of years. And so and in the county's bridge shelters, so we have motel units, and so people are able to bring in their companion pets in there as well. So I think really making sure that folks know that whether it's someone's belongings, everything that they have, making sure that there's storage for their belongings, or having a place for their pet. All of those are important things, and for us to address homelessness in our community. So again, thank you, Sarah and Danielle. Anything else before we say goodbye to them? All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
I see a dog.
All right, folks. So Now we're on to agenda item number 6, and this is the social services block grant funding allocation discussion, and really talking about recommendations. So one thing that I want to make note of is last year we put together a small committee to review, discuss, and then bring it back up to the committee overall. And I would like to do that again this year. I think that overall that was a good method for folks to be able to dig in and share back the information. I know when I last spoke with Kelly that we're still waiting on details from DES about this year's SSBG allocation, but really looking to see if the, how everyone else feels about having that small group, and then if there's volunteers for that, and then again, bringing that back to the committee to vote on. So thoughts?
This is Renee from Peoria. I'm supportive of that. I know there's a lot of information to go through, and sometimes it's easier to do it in a small group. So I would support that. And time permitting, last year I wasn't able to participate, but if I can, Michelle, I'll volunteer.
Cool. Other thoughts?
Hey, Jacqueline, it's Susan. You guys can, oh yeah, you can hear me now. It's an interesting question because I've been involved in this process for the last several years, and I've always found the process to be interesting and a good dialogue. There's a lot of conversation. And I think it's an important exercise for members of this committee to actually participate in. The SSBG reporting, or excuse me, allocation is an important function of this group. So as long as it doesn't become, 2 or 3 people know what's going on and the rest of us are just, kind of rubber stamping it, I'm okay. And I own my own part of this, right? I'm guilty as charged when it comes to sometimes sitting through meetings and saying, oh yeah, somebody else figured that out. So yeah, that sounds good. I'm with Renee. I can also support the small group. I'm also willing to be on the small group if there's room. I don't want to overwhelm it, but as long as everybody who's assigned to this committee is still actively engaging in that conversation or the outcome, I'd be okay with that too. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Susan. Yeah, I know that in some years past, just because the timing for, timing for our meetings, timing for when DES comes together, but I would say the small group is never to cut out the rest of the committee at all, and really for the small group to present some options, recommendations, go through, and then for our broader committee to discuss. So I wouldn't want it, as chair, I certainly wouldn't want it just to be an action item and then us just move forward, because you are 100% right of how it, this is a very important duty of ours. And I would certainly welcome as many volunteers as possible. Just with timing last year, I know that a lot of people weren't able to do it. So I think maybe this thinking ahead now that maybe we're able to get some dates going for us to start digging in earlier. Other comments, questions, discussion? Yes, Mary Lynn.
I know that in the past we had presenters talk about each of the groups, like what were the adults, families, and children, what were the older adults, people with disabilities, the needs. And we also looked at how that funding was allocated. Is that something that we want to do? So that we know what the issues are of the various groups. I mean, I mean, what we would normally do is have those presented and then we would have a discussion about where we might move money around.
Yeah, I think some of the, and I think this is something that I know Kelly's not able to join us today because she is on a vacation, but I know some of the, and I kind of asked Dee Dee to make notes so we can look back with Kelly on it. Some of the difficulties in the past were getting, it was kind of a dual thing of getting the appropriate people in the right categories, that there weren't necessarily folks that had the right knowledge base. Of course, there were some that certainly do, but also it really pertaining to the need, because of we know that there's need across the need across the board. So I can go, so if we make note to talk to Kelly to see about kind of that information, but certainly wanting to make sure that all of the committee members see past allocations. And I know Kelly had worked with DES already to try to get more details from them. So I'm hoping that we will have more information, like more of that backup information that we haven't necessarily been provided in the past moving forward. Yeah, yes.
And one other comment is that I think in the discussion and the decision making, we have to really exclude all the ARPA funding, because we know that the ARPA funding is not here for a long time, that it'll be done by 2024. And so we can't say, well, you know, the whatever, the homeless people got this much money and so they don't need it coming up. I think that's something that's going to be really important, because a lot of the ARPA funding is one time and is not going to be ongoing in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the timing, since we do these annually, if that's not something that we take into consideration now, it will certainly be important for next year's decision making, since these are just annual allocations, because next year is when it will really make that difference.
Well, and the only problem with that is that it's really hard to move money from one category to another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jacqueline and Marilyn, to that point, I think when the last time we had kind of a presentation in these areas or these categories was actually pre-COVID. And so I can only imagine that there's probably some impacts from COVID, from all of this federal funding. So that's a really good point. I think that, you know, if we can maybe put out feelers to have the people that are in these fields maybe share with us, okay, what have you experienced as a result of COVID? What have you experienced as a result of the influx of funding? Even if we don't have that funding, you know, the funding itself play a part, the funding certainly has changed the landscape. You know, there's been more infrastructure built, and you know, so I think that there's all sorts of new, you know, conversations to have, and I'm not very versed on some of that stuff when it comes to, you know, disabled individuals, children. I used to be, but not anymore. And so I think that's a really good point to put the feelers back out for updated presentations.
And what's the increased need since COVID? And I'll just give you one example. Is we typically got 40,000 calls a year to our 24-hour senior helpline. Like last year, something was 50-some thousand. This past fiscal year, it was 63,000. So, you know, the needs have really increased because of COVID and people reaching out for help.
Thank you. Christina.
Thanks. Madam Chair, do you mind explaining a little bit more background about why we would take it outside of our regular meeting, only because when I look at what this committee's purpose is, there are 3 things enumerated on the website. This is one of them, and it's pretty much the only one that I've ever observed us actually do. So I guess I'm having second thoughts about the idea of taking it out. Why not use this time to do that then?
I think primarily, Christina, the challenges that we ran into last year, and it appears we may run into it this year, is the timing at first of when we actually get the information from DES, then the timing for our meetings, and then the timing of the other MAG meetings that it has to go to. And so I would first say that if there is no timing issues, then I don't think that it would be necessary, other than the fact of we may want to have have a group review beforehand, because sometimes what's happened in the past as well is that we carry on the conversation. We have these robust conversations and we go back and we ask for more information and we ask for more details. And then we're again butt up again, like we postpone it. And so I think that's really where that issue comes in. And I don't know if Dee Dee has it. And I'd have to go back and check through my emails if Kelly mentioned some of the timing issues that are approaching. And so she, in preparation for the meeting, she was inquiring about this. So.
Yeah, and timing has been always an issue, but so then that I think raises question for how practical it is altogether for the group to do it, like this committee to do it, then maybe, but also then just for clarification, so if we were to have a special meeting versus a small group to do it, the barrier would be the need for a quorum that we couldn't assure. So that's the reason for taking it to a small group. So I think that's important for the other members of the committee to understand. This conversation that we're hearing Mary Lynn talk about, for example, the issues she's bringing up, those are the discussions that are raised as a part of making the recommendation. So it is really valuable to participate in the small group, even if you don't feel like you personally can contribute to it, because it will make you more effective in your work in your own jurisdiction. So just a plug for trying to show up for that small group.
Thank you, Christina. And I think there's some potential other things we can take a look at, regarding timing, even if it's small group presentations, if everyone's not able to, or, having a special meeting for the presentations. And if no action items are, if I'm correct, Dee Dee, or please correct me if I'm wrong here, but if there's no action items being taken, we can still hear a presentation, even if we don't have quorum. Is that correct, Dee Dee?
Thank you, Chair and Madam of the committee. We can still hear presentation. It wouldn't really be considered an Hstc committee meeting.
Okay, so those are things that we can take a look at as well on, whether it's, multiple meetings to discuss, different frameworks for the SSBG allocation, or having presentations, or, some of those items, potentially in smaller groups. So for those who are able to attend, then opening up options. So then when we do have our scheduled meeting, then we've given ample opportunity, and we're not, we don't have to, hopefully don't have to extend it and butting up into other timelines. Mary Lynn, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is we could spend the next couple of meetings at least talking about what are the issues that we're seeing, so that like we need more money in this area or that area, even if we're not making a definitive decision on how much funding a, an area would get for a particular service or whatever, but so that we can, even if it's not a formal, but we talk about the different groups and what their issues are and what we see just because of time or because of COVID and other things.
That's a really great point.
Chair Edwards.
Yes.
Hi, this is Karen with the City of Chandler. So I have another thought that might piggyback onto what Mary Lynn was just suggesting, and that is, I remember going through the process last year. I was still serving as proxy at that particular time. What I remember is there was that sense, at least from my perspective, of a disconnect between the subcommittee and the full committee and the recommendations that were being presented. And so maybe having those conversations even before we know what the dollar amount is, similar to how many of our municipalities are allocating HUD funds. We don't always know the award amount, but we start the process early, we build in the contingency. So at least then the subcommittee might have some direction from the entire committee and then bring it back to the full committee.
That's a really great point, Karen, and I think important to share. And so maybe that's just, I went back through and looked for the email that Kelly sent to me that we will need to make approval in our October meeting. We will need to approve the recommendation in October. So between now and October, whether it's small group or providing, if we want to make any, to Karen's point now, I know we don't have this information in front of us, but make any directions or points to our to the subcommittee now, because the next time we will meet will be when we need to make an overall recommendation as a group, and then that will be voted shortly thereafter by the HSCIC. Any thoughts?
This is Juri. I'm going to chime in. So this is my first year participating in this process, but it sounds like it's very, very important discussion and recommendations that are going to be set forth. And it sounds like we have a very short window of time to get the work done. And so I'm just thinking about, from a practicality standpoint, how many meetings would need to happen, or small groups that would need to happen between now and the October meeting to have those recommendations, shored up. So any thoughts on the time that we would need to actually make this happen?
So I think that's a great question. And I think it depends on a couple of things, based on like what Karen was sharing of us just making general guidance to the committee could be beneficial, because even though we need to make that approval in October, we don't know what those dollar amounts are from DES, and I don't know that we will know until shortly before we need to make the approval, because that's what's happened in the past. So I think one thing we can certainly do is have the MAG staff share. We do have a document of, okay, what we funded in this past year and what are other things that what is the historical funding patterns that we have had. So I think that would be important for each one of us to take a look at. And then we'd have to work with MAG to see, to have any additional meetings or whatnot. Last year, the subcommittee meeting met one time, looked at the information beforehand and then met one time to make a decision or a recommendation to present to the committee.
Madam Chair, is there reason to think that the funding amount is going to vary more substantially than it has historically? Isn't it usually just a couple percent one way or the other?
I have no idea, honestly, Christina. I'm not sure what the funding levels, and I don't have any indication if it's just going to be the same or if it's gonna change radically. I mean, we could, make decisions just, and I think we've looked at this before, just based on what the funding levels are at, and then we could set, priority targets, and if we have to decrease funding anywhere, then we can make that decision.
Say that packet of information you sent out last year was very helpful, because I'm familiar with SSBG, but not the process. And so if we could get that information from MAG sooner rather than later, it would be greatly appreciated. And I guess I would also say that, with the short timeline, I like the idea of even a presentation from DES to understand how their process works and how we fit in. I like the idea of presentations on at least subject matter experts on the categories, but I know timing is an issue. I guess that would call for a special meeting in September, and I could make myself available. I also don't know what the protocols are and if that's something that we could legitimately do. But it seems like the subcommittee process may be our only option.
Yeah, so there is, and maybe Dylan or Dee Dee could help out. There was a presentation by DES on how this fits in, and since all of our meetings are recorded, that was not a pre-pandemic presentation. So I would suspect that it's not going, like, their process hasn't changed for years. So I would be really surprised if it all of a sudden changed now. So maybe that's that link to that DES presentation. That link to that meeting could be shared with the group. So then for any new members, that's a great way to kind of get that background and education on the process itself. Dee Dee and Dylan, could you take a look for that meeting for us, please?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Dylan, I'm sure I can provide you with the notes of some of the things that they are considering for materials to talk with this discussion, and we can look for that information.
That's great. So yeah, between those materials, the backup information, which you said, Renee, the other backup information that I believe was sent out last year, then we can make sure that all of that gets to the committee members.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, may I summarize part of the discussion?
Please.
Okay, thank you. The committee did have consensus on the importance of following up, whether it be a continuation of the people group or a small work group. Due to the timelines of deadlines, it is really recommended that it be a special work group to come together to kind of reevaluate and look over the SSBG funding. I did take note that Susan and possibly Renee did verbalize that they would be a part of that process. If possible, if sooner than later, for MAC staff to provide historical data of past recommendations and also the presentation from DES. It was also suggested that if possible, they have more updated information regarding the need for funding that also takes into consideration the effects of COVID on these divisions and programs. I just reiterate, the next Hstc meeting is on October 13th. So there is a sense of urgency that we do kind of formalize procedure that will lend itself into developing this SSBG funding allocations.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee Dee. I think that was a great summary. Any other comments or additions to what Dee Dee summarized for all of us?
This is Drew with City of Avondale. I would just like to add a suggestion. I know that there was talk about potential subject matter expert presentations, but due to time constraints, I'm wondering if the group has in the past or is or would consider looking at community needs assessments within the Maricopa region and beyond, depending on if we need to look outside of Maricopa as well. To kind of gather some of that information. I think that might be a good way to get our hands wrapped around what the recent needs were.
Great suggestion, Jerry. Really appreciate that. I know that we've, some of the jurisdictions have shared needs assessments. I know VSUW has shared the needs assessment in the past, and so maybe everyone's sharing information that way as well. Any other points of discussion for this? Okay, very good. Thank you everyone for your input. I appreciate it. All right, number 7 on our agenda, request for future agenda items. Are there any topics of interest or future agenda items that the committee would like? All right. Well, if something comes, topic comes to mind, please email Kelly or Dylan. I'm sure either one can take that information, and Kelly's has the MAG team has done a great job at providing great presentations and information for us. So if there's something that you're looking for in your organization or in your jurisdiction that you think would be beneficial for all of us to hear, would love a presentation from any of you as well. Okay, going to go on to number 8. So this is where members are provided an opportunity to share information and updates. And this item is for information only. And so any actions that may be proposed would be slated for a future meeting. So would anyone like to share information?
Chair, this is Susan from City of Phoenix. I actually wasn't sure where to bring this up. It's not necessarily information to share, but I apologize because I joined the call just a couple minutes late. I missed the review and approval of the minutes. And the only reason why I noticed this was because it's attributed to me in the minutes. There is a mistake that I think needs to be corrected on page 4 of the minutes. And it just simply says Susan Hallett, City of Phoenix, asked if the Human Services Division still operates the Age-Friendly Arizona Initiative. I actually asked if MAG still operates that. So I don't know. I know that's not a really big deal, but I just didn't want the, it to be the record to not be reflected accurately. So, but I don't otherwise have anything important to share.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan, for bringing that up. And I know the MAG team will make note of that. We did approve the meeting minutes, but we can make note of that to make sure that that's reflected accurately. All right. Well, if there's nothing else to share, then today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much. And be on the lookout for additional information regarding the SSBG process. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.